On this episode, we travel to Montreal to attend the 11th International Conference on Mobility and Transport for Elderly and Disabled Persons. Then we look at how Montreal is working to create universal accessibility. We learn about Montreal's transportation plan and the Pedestrian Charter. Finally, we talk with Barry Wellar in Ottawa about his Walking Security Index. Stay tuned. We're in Montreal talking with Valerie Gilles, who's a senior ergonomist with Transport Canada. What is an ergonomist?
It's a human factor specialist. So we basically do research in human factor in transport at Transport Canada.
And we've just finished up the 11th TransEd conference. What does TransEd stand for, and what is the conference?
It's an international conference on mobility and transport for elderly and people with that are disabled. So this brings basically people together to talk about the research and how the transportation can be more accessible.
What are some of the things people have been talking about over the last few days?
Actually, quite a lot. Over the last few days, they've been talking about, infrastructure in terms of streets, how you go about for pedestrians, but also for air accessibility. They've been talking about driving, how you, make the driving task easier when you get older or when you have a disability, but also how you can, even when people are getting old, judge if they can still have skills to drive and not scare people too early about their task of driving. And what else? Any related transportation issues were discussed also with airport accessibility, train accessibility, quite a big range.
What happens? You have this exchange of ideas, people go home, what happens next?
Well, basically the idea is that with TransEd and with the outcome of it that we actually have written on CD, because we ask people for their papers on what they present, people have a recollection of all the information on research or even on other codes of practice, best practices, so they can actually use it and maybe improve the accessibility that they have at home, compare it, build on it, especially if they come from developing countries. So that's the essential, is really how you put everybody together, you try to solve, to first state the problems, try to solve them, have solutions, share the solutions with everyone.
Why is all this important?
Well, it's important because accessibility is, part of the everyday life. If you by making transportation and infrastructure more accessible, it works for everyone. It doesn't just work for people that have mobility issues, but it works for even families. It works for elderly. So really, it's a global issue. I mean, it's an issue for everyone.
We're in Montreal talking with Marie-Josée Bonnet. Who do you work for?
I'm Director of Social Diversity for the City of Montreal, which includes actions against poverty, social development, and equality between men and women.
And it also covers people with disabilities?
Yes, people with disabilities, and the action plan for the year to help handicapped people living well in Montreal. Universal accessibility.
Now, when we talk about universal accessibility, what does that include?
We are working in four different sectors. The first one is the easiest one. It's the architectural accessibility and all the urban planning. So we are working for accessibility in the building, adjust toilets, reception, and all things like that. We are also preparing a pedestrian guidelines for design for all people planning urban spaces. It's the first part of our work.
So what's the second part?
The second sector is the communication, accessibility for the services of the city. We prepare a website for people with literacy and intellectual needs. So we use French is a difficult language, and we've learned that people can't have the information about housing, about garbages, snow during the winter. So we prepare with the University of Montreal and also a special association. We prepare a simplified language, and we open that website. So it also helps our immigrants who can speak French or English but can't read easily French. So it's more than just handicapped people. It's good for everybody. The third sector is leisure. We have a companion program to help people using our leisure camp during the summer for the young and also for the adult. We put over $500,000 to help people participate in those activities. And also we have the fourth sector is awareness and training for our employees and preparing them to answer all the questions and all the needs of the citizen. So there are four major sectors, and I forgot to tell about the employment. At the City of Montreal, we encourage the employment of handicapped people. So we made a big survey in 2006 to know how many people we have with special needs, and we have a plan to accept more people in our working force. So it's also a good program.
What sort of guidance or direction do you get from the province as opposed to just being completely on your own?
In Montreal, we have a long tradition of working with handicapped people. In 1958, we have our first partnership with association. But now, in 2006, the provincial government asked us to have an annual plan. So we had one in 2002 with the Summit of Montreal, which group all the people in the private sector and governments and the association talking about major topics for the city, but one was universal accessibility. So in 2002 we prepared a plan, but now in 2006 the provincial government asked us to prepare the first official one, and we have one in 2007 this year, and we'll prepare next year a 3 years program. It will be easier for everybody to work on a long-term period.
Yeah. How is the city divided up into sub-regions? How do you work on carrying out your program within the city?
In Montreal, we have 2 levels of government. We have the boroughs, who are responsible for the day-to-day services to the population. So we help them with guidelines, with training, because they give the first answer to the people when they ask a municipal service. But at the central, where I am, we are preparing guidelines. We are preparing funding for special programs. We are doing research in partnership with nonprofit association and universities.
And you mentioned you've been working on this for decades.
Yes.
How have the issues changed over the years, and are you seeing progress?
Oh yes, we are seeing progress, because in the beginning we were only aware of wheelchairs. Now we have signals at the corners of the street for people, for blind people. We are talking more with mentally handicapped persons to help them live in the city as anybody. So now we pay more attention to all types of needs for the people.
We're in Montreal talking with André Lavallée. What's your role in the Montreal government?
I'm partly responsible for urban and transportation, and also I'm mayor of one of the neighborhoods of Montreal, Rosemont-La Petite-Patrie.
Montreal has something as a transportation plan. How did that get started?
I just deposed a couple of weeks ago, the 17th of May, the first proposal for a new transportation plan for Montreal. It's the first one. It's never have been done because since many years, governments around us decide what's good for Montreal. And when governments decide, essentially they decide to build bridges and new roads and new highway. So we decide to assume the leadership of as local elective. We decide to assume our leadership and to take in consideration what we think are the aspirations of and the valeur of the Montrealers now.
What's in the plan?
The plan is ambitious. We want to convince people to use public and active transportation mode to get around in the city most of the time. So we in consideration of that, our responsibility is to propose very important project that will increase radically the offer, so that people will have an advantage. They will find real advantage to use public transportation, to walk in the city, to use bicycle paths and everything like that.
And you have something called the Pedestrian Charter. How does that fit into this?
Yes, last year we made a very specific consultation, very important public debate about what's the place of the pedestrian in the city. Montreal have some advantage if you compare with many other cities. It's possible here to walk in the city 24 hours per day. The downtown people are living in downtown. They are not only working. They are not just working in downtown. They are living downtown, studying. So you'll find people all around 24 hours per day. But the real capacity of pedestrians to cross streets, to walk, and security have to be really increased. So we have been discussing of many measures that should be implemented in Montreal to increase the security of the people living in the city, and also to increase the quality of life, increase the quality of the air. So different kind of measure. We hire more than 150 new policemen just to watch people crossing on the red light, for example. We want to ban the use of cellular phone when driving. We want to decrease the speed in the local street. We want to create in all the different neighborhoods. Montreal is a kind of network of different unique neighborhoods. We want to create in the specific residential areas of Montreal green neighborhoods where local authority will be allowed to implement all the measures that they find necessary, such as traffic calming, to increase the quality of life and the security around the primary school, for example, the residences for all those people and everything. So it's a plan that, and all those measures after the discussion have been put in the new urban transportation plan of the city of Montreal. So they are becoming reality now.
What's it going to take to put the transportation plan into effect? What are you going to be doing over the next year and the next decade?
We have to be ambitious. We need to assume a real leadership, because the proposition is by itself ambitious. We are proposing to reinvent Montreal, and for that we will have many people are discussing about greenhouse effects, emanations, quality of life, quality of air. Many people are talking, but we have to realize the project. There is 21 major projects that are the base of the funding of the urban plan. For that, we need to convince partners. We need money. We need to invest a couple of new $100 million per year. So we are discussing at this time at the municipal city council. At the city council, we are discussing of the financement strategies of the plan. We're talking about national strategy of public transportation. We're asking to the federal government. Canada is the only country of the G8 who do not support a real national strategy at this time. All the major Canadian cities have been working together to present a demand. We are also discussing about implementing toll around the island of Montreal. By itself, this new measure will bring to the city something like $300 million per year of new dollars that could be invested in the realization of the plan itself. So we will make a decision at the end of the year. After the consultation, people will agree on the measures and the project that should be done, and after that we'll make the decision on the financement, and next year we will realize the first of those projects, couple of those projects.
We're in Ottawa talking with Barry Wellar. You created something called the Walking Security Index. How did that all get started?
Well, John, the city of Ottawa, like the vast majority of other cities in North America, had a problem which was dealing with pedestrians at intersections. This was very difficult. They didn't know how to assess intersections. They didn't really know how to determine whether or not intersections were working well or indifferently. They really just didn't know much of anything. So they retained me to design the Walking Security Index. I proposed that I would design this for them, and I designed about 10 indexes and completed that project in 1998. Over the course of the next several months, they decided that they would fund a pilot study. So I tested the Walking Security Index for them, and in fact, at that time we had three major components: the Intersection Volume and Design Index, the Quality of Intersection Condition Index, and a Driver Behavior Index. I tested them all, and as far as I was concerned, based on the evidence of 33 intersections that we used, community groups participated, everybody, as far as I knew, including the police department, were very happy with it. So at the end of the pilot study, and having gone through all those tests, it was deemed a success as far as I knew, until it was turned over to the engineering staff.
Uh-oh. What happened then?
Well, the engineers weren't happy, because what this meant was that their role as major players was now over. What the index did is it actually took it out of the engineers' hands, the engineers' training, the engineers' preferences as to what it is that they thought was a quality intersection from the point of view of pedestrians. And by its own admission, the city of Ottawa didn't have a clue as to what it was. That's why they hired me. But the engineers were in serious denial. And so they brought in another engineer to, in effect, repudiate my work. Well, the upshot of it was the mayor and council took sort of a compromise position. They told the engineers, okay, you take Wellar's work, you take the best work that you can find, and you produce an improved index. And they gave them that instruction on February 26, 2003. That's what the engineers were told to do.
Okay, that was 4+ years ago.
It's now the 27th of June. There's still no index. There is still nothing. The engineers, for all intents and purposes, were totally in denial. They were all talk. They've been all talk in the transportation field for pedestrians for more than 100 years. And in the city of Ottawa, that's where they still are. It's all talk. Now, in terms of the Walking Security Index itself, as to the quality of the work, I was sworn in as an expert witness in Saskatchewan in a lawsuit against the city of Moose Jaw and the school board. And when I left there, the child that I represented, she had won $13 million in a lawsuit. The Walking Security Index was used and accepted as part of my evidence. Last year, I was an expert witness against, of all people, the city of Ottawa. I was retained by a woman who fell. And I was sworn in by the court, accepted as an expert witness, and used the quality of intersection condition work in my case in testifying against the city of Ottawa, and we won that one as well. It's now being appealed by the city of Ottawa. I have no idea on what basis they would appeal, because they didn't challenge me worth anything. It was almost a waste of my time. It was hardly, I felt like I was playing with children. The quality of cross-examination was so weak compared to what it is that I thought I could bring to bear. So that didn't work out very well for the city of Ottawa. So it's been now an expert witness twice. It's been used twice in court. It's being used by governments in Canada and the United States and offshore, so that in fact the quality of work in terms of application seems to have been very good. And it's being used in universities, in master's theses and PhD theses. And in fact, I get so many requests for it that I've now had to put together a publication list, which is on the order of 40 to 45 publications on the Walking Security Index. So in fact, the pioneering work that was done in 1995, it's now 12 years later, and as far as I can tell, it stood the test of time. And we're always inviting municipalities. Take a look at it. You don't have anything in many cases. Take a look at this, modify it to fit your particular circumstances. But the methodology that was employed there was innovative, and I would argue, and I think the evidence is clear, extremely robust. It's been able to stand up to the criticism of those who didn't like it. And of course, the challenge was to the engineers, if you don't like it, produce a better one. And they haven't done anything. So I guess, as far as we know, it's the best. It's still the best that's out there.
And very briefly, Walking Security Index, as you mentioned, is actually several indexes. What goes into it? What are we measuring exactly?
Well, for the Driver Behavior Index, for example, we're looking at lights that are red. They're running the red, they're running the amber. We did particularly significant work with regard to the failure to yield part, because this is the part that affects pedestrians the most. So that from the point of view of the Driver Behavior Index, we have failure to stop at stop bars, failure to stay out of the crosswalk, failure to yield to pedestrians who are in the crosswalk, failure to stop at stop signs. In fact, anything that indicates that what we have here is an aggressive driver. So that was the first one. The second one was on the Quality of Intersection Condition Index, and we used about 18 variables to ascertain whether or not the condition of the intersection was satisfactory and the maintenance was satisfactory from the point of view of pedestrians. And I guess actually the first one we did was the Intersection Volume and Design Index, and that looked at really the size of the index, the size of the intersection, and whether or not it was friendly to pedestrians. Obviously, big intersections with lots of cars would get a very, very poor rating. A small intersection that's square, high level of visibility, impediments to fast-moving traffic, that would get a good rating. So those were the 3 macros, but there were 10 micros. But that we really looked at every aspect that you could think of with regard to intersections from the point of view of pedestrians.
And cities or consulting firms and others that have taken an interest in the index. How do they put it to practical use?
Well, what you can do actually is you can actually look at current intersections. I mean, let's say for the sake of argument you have an intersection proposal. And in the US you use the term improvement. Well, I've argued the improvement is a nonsense term. It's not an improvement at all if all you're doing is moving cars. What it is a modification. But let's say you were going to add 2 extra lanes and you wanted to know what impact would that have. Well, you could find an intersection at the present time which is 2 lanes larger than the one you're going to look at, do an assessment of that intersection and how well it serves pedestrians, and then that would tell you when you're finished these modifications, that's what you're going to get. Is you're going to get an intersection which is just as bad as the one that already exists 3 miles over on the west side of town. We've got one exactly as to what you're looking at. So what you can do actually is you use this to rank intersections. It tells you best to worst for the quality of condition, the intersection volume of design, and the driver behavior, and it ranks them. So that if you wanted to assign police, there you go. You don't have to wander around saying, look, we got 1,500 signalized intersections, which ones do we look at? If you maintain data sets on these intersections, this is where you would go. And your objective, of course, is to take the worst and move it down. So it's actually a guide to how you would change intersections, how you would assign police. You could look at, for example, a number of times that a stop bar is violated. How many times do they go over? Well, now, it may be that the intersection is on a slope. Maybe that's why. If that's the case, and in fact, in almost any case, move the stop bar back. Move it back 20 feet. Then they're not going to be going over it into the crosswalk, are they? So they're very practical, very, very practical work.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.